Good day, everybody. On my way to the park with little Miss Kenzie. There's my girl. So I wanted to talk about the vaccine passport issue. I hope you caught Irving Twins After Hours live stream we did on Friday night. It was a good live stream. We haven't done one in ages. It was great to talk to my good friend Irving again. It's been too long. I haven't uploaded a video since Canada Day, and that video was just a joke. So here's the reason, though. I've been very deflated, very disillusioned by what's going on in this country, what's going on in Western civilization, what's going on all over the world. It seems as though, and I've said this before, Loki was right. People want to be ruled. People don't want the trouble associated with living in a free country, with having freedoms, because it's just too much hassle, and there's just too many distractions, and there's just too much shit going on in their day-to-day lives that taking responsibility for being free and being a good fellow citizen and affording rights to your fellow citizens, even citizens you don't agree with, is just too difficult. I recently had a row with my father-in-law. I may have, touched on this before, but my father-in-law and I were very similar in that we become passionate about things. We have strong opinions about things, but we couldn't disagree more politically, which is surprising. It's like, I don't know. We started discussing, we were at dinner a few weeks back, and we were talking about the day's events and that kind of thing, and I remember reading that, or watching a video to the effect that in Australia, they were deploying the military to enforce the lockdowns. And I just made, very casually, I think that's a little bit authoritarian, like, to which he disagreed. And I was like, well, you don't think it's authoritarian to have military roaming the streets of a Western, free democratic country and making sure people stay inside their houses? And he's like, no, I agree with these measures. I mean, I'm not going to impersonate him, because that would be disrespectful. Although I had a very strong opinion about his reaction at the time. But he basically is in favor of lockdowns. He's in favor of government forcing people to curb their activity, curb their freedom, not exercise their freedom to, see friends, to hang out with other people, to go to public places. And his whole position is, well, some people are just too stupid. Some people don't know any better, and the government needs to take a hand. And I'm like, well, part of living in a free society is you have to accept that people are going to behave badly and people are going to do things that you don't agree with. And I'd much rather have more freedom than more security, more safety. To which he disagreed, and I just don't understand that. And he's a reasonable guy. He's not, I don't know. It's just weird that this is an average Joe who loves, Canada, loves our country, but I don't know what he loves about it if he doesn't love being free in this country. Here's a case in point, or not a case in point, but here's an example of the flawed logic that I witnessed. So, my wife's family are from Quebec. They left Quebec back in the 70s, 80s, I guess 80s, when Bill C whatever was passed. The language laws in Quebec were passed, basically restricting English-owned businesses, English students, English families from living as Englishmen in Quebec, basically. If you're not familiar with the language laws, they have a language police force, essentially, that makes sure that signs feature predominantly Quebecois as opposed to English. They have police forces that they have a government body essentially that forces English-speaking children to go to French schools because they have this idea that the French culture is paramount in Quebec and we can't ever have any other culture undermining it. And you know what? This is their edict. This is their ethos, I should say. You know, that's fine, but the point is that they made these restrictions on English speakers in Quebec, and English speakers were not a small part of the Quebec population. They were significant. They were still a minority, but they were not a small minority. And so he said to hell with this. He was running a business. He found that the restrictions were too restrictive on his business, and he up and left. And he made a point of saying, they treated English speakers as second-class citizens. And I asked him about this. Why did you leave? And he told me. So they were treating English speakers as second-class citizens. And I said they were being restrictive to your livelihood, restrictive to the way you wanted to live your life. They were being authoritarian in how people were going to conduct their day-to-day operations, their day-to-day, personal lives. It's like, no, that's not authoritarianism. They just treated English speakers like they were second-class citizens. And I'm like, well, I view it as authoritarianism. What's more, I view what we're seeing right now as a push in the social consciousness to treat people who are hesitant about vaccinations, who think the restrictions are authoritarian, who don't agree with mask mandates, who don't agree with all of these restrictions put on people's lives, treating them as second-class citizens. Putting into place this passport system in Quebec, whereby you're not going to be able to go to things like the gym, or a cafe, or a restaurant, or a theater, unless you have a QR code on your phone telling the person at the door that you're okay because you're double vaccinated, or at some point maybe even triple vaccinated. You have your yearly booster, right? And those people who can't get vaccinated, don't wish to get vaccinated, or for whatever reason, they're not going to be allowed to go into theaters, to gyms, to cafes or restaurants, treating them like they're second-class citizens. And the fact that most people are on board with this, or just not necessarily saying, yeah, go, let's do this, but just have tacit approval, just like, whatever, I don't care, I'm double vaccinated, is really, really disheartening to me. And it's because people take their freedoms for granted. And they don't care about freedom. They don't care about fighting for freedom. And that sounds like a trope, fighting for freedom. But when I say fighting for freedom, I just mean speaking up in defense of freedom, in defense of people's decision to make decisions, people's right to make decisions about their own bodies. There are plenty of people who have a myriad of conditions who can't get vaccinated for one reason or another. And then there are still other people who are like, look, you know what? The thing is not fully approved. It was approved for emergency use. I don't trust pharmaceutical companies, especially with the track record they have of lying to people, of hiding research that indicates their products are harmful. I don't trust them. So, and I certainly don't trust the government. And why people are so trustworthy, find the government to be so trustworthy when they have shown time and time again that they're at the very least incompetent and at the worst malicious. Why people trust them so much? The only conclusion I can draw is that it's just too much bother. It's too much bother to hold your elected officials accountable. It's just too much bother to raise a stink. It's too difficult to dig your heels in. It's better to just roll over. It's easier to just roll over and say, you know what? I don't like them. I'll vote them out. I'll vote against them in the next election. Everyone's been duped into thinking that this electoral process we have, this democracy we have, is the remedy for bad actors in government, for the remedy for collusion between multinational corporations and government. It's the remedy for the corruption in government. Well, you can just vote for somebody who's less corrupt. The problem is they're all corrupt. The only people who aren't corrupt are the outsiders, the people who aren't, regular politicians, the people who aren't, people who actually espouse sentiments of small government, of limited government, of getting corruption out of government. See, the thing is that the liberals only hold out corruption when they can weaponize it against conservatives, and vice versa. The conservatives are only talking about corruption in government when they can weaponize it against their political opponents. They don't give a shit about it at all, in reality. Only when it can be weaponized, only when it can be used to score political points. They don't argue, they don't operate from first principles. They operate from political ideology. And then people, they just don't care. They're disinterested. Thank you. Freedom's too much trouble for them. Holding people to account is too much trouble. Or they think that, engaging in the electoral process once every 4 or 5 years is their duty in terms of defending freedom. Irvington made a good point in the last live stream. We don't have democracy in our country. We don't have freedom in our country because of Section 1 of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Section 1 explicitly states that government can basically rescind your rights if they've got a good reason. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, I'm watering it down, but it's essentially what it comes down to. The government can suspend people's rights and freedoms if they've got a justifiable reason to. We also have something here in Canada called the notwithstanding clause, meaning the premiers of a province or the prime minister can just say, you know what, to hell with the law, we're doing this, and if you don't like it, you can vote us out in 5 years. We're invoking the notwithstanding clause. Notwithstanding that this measure is unconstitutional, we're going to institute it anyway, and if you don't like it, you can vote us out in 5 years. That's within our Constitution. And I don't understand, I understand, I guess, the premise behind it, so that it sort of limits the ability of top-down government to the provincial level. It allows premiers a bit more autonomy, but the problem is it makes them unaccountable because people are disengaged, people don't care, and people won't hold them to account, especially when you've got a media apparatus that runs cover for politicians and doesn't actually do their job of holding them to account. Anyway, it's kind of an all over the place rant. I apologize for that. Like I said, I'm deflated. I don't know what to do. Irving's planning on moving to Odessa. Originally he was talking about Alberta, now he's thinking Odessa, Texas, because he doesn't recognize his country anymore. I'm Canadian and I love my country and I'm not going to give up on it, but I'm not going to lie, disillusioned about it right about now, especially with things I see from colleagues and friends that are, they're in this mindset of, they're obeying all the rules, and all the people who don't obey the rules, they're the ones ruining their lives. Like, it's not them ruining your life, it's your government ruining your life, and they're making it so that you feel the need to blame people who aren't following the rules. I'm at the park now. Kenzie's losing her mind because she wants to go play with the other puppies. I'll talk to y'all later. Take care. Bye-bye.